Hello, Gateway Virtual Academy teachers. I am so glad to be with you today. My name is Shannon Holden. I am a webinar presenter for edweb.net and also the originator and creator of newteacherhelp.com. We're going to talk about how you can be a more effective teacher today. I'm very happy to be with you today, Gateway Virtual Academy. I've surfed around on your website. It looks like you have an awesome school that serves the needs of your students. But with having a school, you can always get better at what you do. So I'm really excited to talk to you today and happy that you are willing to have a growth mindset and think about ways that you can improve instruction for your students. I taught high school math and middle school history for 8 years in Texas. I've been an assistant principal for 17 years in Texas and Missouri. I teach online courses at the University of North Dakota and the University of the Pacific, and I also teach classes in person at Missouri State University and Lindenwood University. And most of what I talk about is implementing instructional strategies, implementing technology in the classroom. And so we're going to talk today about how you can improve your lesson delivery, make engaging lessons, have patience through stressful moments in class, reviewing your intentions for being a teacher often, preparing your lesson for the class. I know that a lot of you have whiteboards, so we'll talk about a place where I like to go to download whiteboard activities. What do you do with kids who don't submit their homework? And what do you do to help parents get involved in their child's education? A lot of times people are working, they're involved in a whole bunch of different activities, and it just seems like they don't have time to help you as you're helping their student. Now I have some free advice for you at bit.ly/huge teacher giveaway. If you go to that folder, it's a Dropbox folder and it's online, so if you go on there with your computer, you can download, there's probably 10 different electronic books on there that will help you with controlling your class, classroom discipline plan, earning respect from students by explaining why you are teaching a particular lesson, why specific rules exist. Kids are always asking why, and that's a good thing. That means they're curious, but a lot of times we take that the wrong way and we think that they're questioning our authority, and then we develop kind of an attitude towards those students, and really they are asking why for a good reason, although it's hard for us to understand that sometimes. Contacting parents without making them angry with you, talking to them about their student in a constructive way. So let's talk about some discipline mistakes, and these will appear in the ebook that you can download. One of them is called New Teacher Survival Kit. Not having a seating chart from day one. I'm not sure how large your classes are, but having a specific place for your students to sit from day one is important. It puts you in control as the teacher from the start, and it helps you learn names very quickly. Discipline mistake number 2, not having a discipline plan. Now there is a discipline plan in the New Teacher Survival Kit that you can download from that link that I showed you before. I would show you the entire discipline plan, but it takes a long time to do that and talk my way through it. And the directions inside the discipline plan are very good. And you can also ask me questions about the discipline plan and any of the ebooks that you can download from the folder. My email address will be posted several times throughout this presentation. It's newteacherhelp@yahoo.com. Newteacherhelp, all lowercase letters, no spaces, newteacherhelp@yahoo.com. Your discipline plan must give students a list of unacceptable behaviors and a list of negative consequences. And you can set that up. It's called a hierarchy of discipline. You can do that the first week of school. The plan should also contain rewards for good behavior. Not just punishments, but rewards. And it takes emotion out of the process. A lot of times when students act up in your class, you get very emotional because you feel like they are disrespecting you, and it makes you angry. And so then you may lose your temper. And what we try to teach is you do not lose your temper. You remain very businesslike. And I tell my students at my school, I say, you know what? It's nothing personal. This is just business. My business is to make sure that you're successful and to teach you all the things that you need to know. And if you're not willing to accept my instruction, then I have to bring consequences on you. And I do the same for anyone else. So the hierarchy starts out with a verbal warning. Then there's a teacher-student conference. There's some form of in-class discipline. I use a discipline book, and there are pages inside the ebook that you can download that are sample pages. You can actually print them out. They're blank, and they go in your discipline book, which is a 3-ring binder. The next step is a parent phone call to explain to them how many times they've had to sign the discipline book. And then if you have an office or a principal, you can send that student to the office. If you do not have an office or a principal, you can remove the student from the room, maybe put them in someone else's room, maybe next door for a few minutes to let them cool down. The new teacher survival kit is in that folder I told you about. You can also email me at newteacherhelp@yahoo.com and put New Teacher Survival Kit as the subject line of the email, and I will just send it to you. And that is yours for free for listening to me today. newteacherhelp@yahoo.com. So some things that people make mistakes, especially new teachers, but sometimes it's tempting to put your hands on a student to kind of let them know who's the boss and say, look, you need to sit down, and you might put your hand on their shoulder. You might even push them into their chair. Touching the students really is not acceptable unless the student is going to harm himself or harm herself or others, or maybe you're defending yourself. Maybe they're going to destroy some property in the room. Or maybe you have to maintain order in the classroom. Then, and only then, it would be acceptable to touch the students. Putting hands on a student takes the focus off the student's poor behavior and it puts it on you, because it's really there's no excuse for putting your hands on a student. So some acceptable consequences are signing the discipline book, maybe removing their privileges, maybe making them give up their computer time, which is difficult in an online school where you're kind of working on the computer a lot. Maybe they do projects in groups. You can take that privilege away. Move them to a new seat. Have a teacher-student conference. Send a letter or an email to the parent explaining that this student is giving you some problems, some issues, let's say. Parent phone call. And if you have a principal, you could send a student to the principal. That's an acceptable disciplinary consequence, but it's always a good idea to go through several different ways to discipline the student before you decide that you're going to make that student go to the office. Sometimes you can have them do cool down time in the hallway or in another student's room, another teacher's room, sorry. The number of minutes in the hallway should be equal to or less than the number of years of age of the student. Don't put a student in the hallway and then forget about them out there. If a student is 11 years old, when you put them in the hallway, you should be getting them back and putting them back into the classroom in 11 minutes or less. If a student is 15, then you should not have them out of your classroom for more than 15 minutes. So here's a poll. Do you feel like you have control over your class? And the answer choices are yes, no, most of the time, some of the time. So your facilitator, who is probably in the room with you, if you could write your answers down or email your answers to these polls to your facilitator, the person who has asked you to watch these videos today. Because it's important to have control over your class in order to feel like that you are reaching your students and helping them to learn the material. So I talk on edweb.net about a million different things, but I can really narrow it down to about 5 or 6 things that teachers should really learn about. Take the time and learn about. It will make you a better teacher. Turning your campus into a professional learning community is a great idea because you are able to collaborate and meet with other teachers, colleagues that you teach with. You can discuss teaching methods that are effective, teaching methods that are not effective. And the way to become a professional learning community is to go to a website where you can find free information about PLCs. It's called allthingsplc.info. allthingsplc.info. If you go to that site, you will see anything and everything that has to do with professional learning communities. You can also read books about professional learning communities. One of them is called Professional Learning Communities at Work. Another one, which is the sequel, is called Whatever It Takes. Many schools are PLCs in name only. If you want to turn your school into a real professional learning community, you will read those books, and it will tell you all sorts of different strategies you can use to turn your campus into a professional learning community. Another great way to make your lessons more engaging for your students is a movement called Cooperative Learning. Cooperative Learning started in the 1970s, and because of the fact that they had not really put as much thought into cooperative learning as they have now, cooperative learning went through a period where teachers bashed cooperative learning because they felt like it was not effective. It was not an effective way for students to learn. Basically, what they were doing instead was something called group work. And when you were in school, I know when I was in school, when we did group work without using the rules and regulations and best practices of cooperative learning, you usually had 1 or 2 people in the group doing all of the work. And there was 1 or 2 people in the group that did nothing, but yet they got the credit for doing the work as well. And so people said, that's not very fair. You've got 2 people doing all the work or 1 person doing all the work, and then the other people in the group are just watching that person, or maybe they're messing around. They're not really engaged in the process, and they're not learning anything. So cooperative learning has made a comeback here in the early stages of the 21st century because they have done the research, they have perfected the techniques. There is a man named Spencer Kagan who is a very smart person that has come up with strategies to use in the classroom to help students learn, and it is way past group work. Formative assessment. Formative assessment is something, as a teacher, it would really make a difference in your classroom if you learned about formative assessment. Getting good at doing formative assessments on the fly during your lesson will set you apart from the crowd. And there are free resources to help you learn. If you type into your Google search, West Virginia formative assessment, the first search term that you will find is a document that was made by the West Virginia Department of Education, and it's got 81 ways for you to do a formative assessment in your classroom. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, what is a formative assessment? A summative assessment, which is different than a formative assessment. A summative assessment is like a test at the end of a chapter or a test at the end of a book, which just kind of is a way for you at the end of an activity, a chapter, a book. It's a way for you to figure out what the students learned. And then because it's at the end of the class, you really don't have an opportunity to act on that data that you gather. You don't really know how to act on it because the kids are gone, they've moved on. But when you do a formative assessment, formative assessments can be done at the beginning of class, in the middle of class, at the end of class. And so basically what you're doing is you're trying to figure out where the students are instructionally and what you need to do as the teacher to take corrective action to help those students learn the material. So formative assessment is a very important thing when you are a teacher. Response to intervention, also known as RTI, not going away anytime soon. It is something that has been talked about and used in classrooms for quite a few years now. Many educators report that RTI is helping them reach challenging students. So if you have any challenging students and you want to reach them, RTI, response to intervention, will give you strategies that you can use in the classroom to reach those students. And there are several different levels of intervention that you can use. The first level of intervention is something that you can use on almost all of your students. And then the second level is what you use for maybe the 25% of students who did not gather the information and are able to apply it the first time that you went through it. And then the third level of interventions are even more intrusive, and they will help that 5% of kids that may not have it even after you've tried to teach it to them twice. There is a website called www.rti4success.org. Has all sorts of resources for you to help students and make your lessons more engaging. There are also trainings being held all over the United States, Canada. You can go to some of those trainings and they can give you ways to reach your students. Differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction is a way for you to tailor your instruction to individual students. Every student brings their own needs, their own issues to the table, and you as the instructor have to find a way to modify your instruction to fit the needs of that student. In the olden days, we just simply taught, and if the kids got it, that's great. If the kids didn't get it, well, that's too bad for them. So what we are kind of moving towards now is a way to get away from that one-size-fits-all mindset, that one-size-fits-all type of instruction. And we can do that. It's not that difficult. And there are strategies that you can use. If you Google differentiated instruction, there are several websites that you can find that will give you strategies to make your lessons more engaging. What you want to do as a teacher is you want to move away from lecturing students. Lecturing students is difficult for many reasons. Number one, we feel like lecturing students is good as older folks because that's the way that we were taught. And so we say to ourselves, well, hey, I turned out great. I know what I'm doing. I'm a knowledgeable person. As a matter of fact, I'm a teacher now. And so kids are going to have to learn that same way that I did because that's the best way. Research has shown that that's not the best way. So we need to step away. Now, there's always times where you can lecture, and lecture is an effective way. but you can't do it all the time, and you can't do it every day, all day, every day. Students just cannot pay attention for that length of time. So in differentiated instruction, you're building relationships with your students. You're meeting the needs of each individual student with strategies that help that particular student. Now, some of those strategies might not help the student sitting right next to them. But that's what individualized instruction, differentiated instruction is. PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Support, will help you with students who might be causing you problems in class. PBIS, if you put PBIS into a Google search, it will send you to several different websites that have strategies you can use in your classroom. Now, this for sure is something that you can hold on to. You might not be interested in PBIS, you might not be interested in differentiated instruction, but one thing that you really should grab onto and really work with your students is teaching them those strategies, those reading strategies that all good readers use. And those reading strategies are available. You can find them online. You can actually read them in one particular book. 90% of students who are unsuccessful in school do not know how to comprehend what they read. They may know how to read the words, but they don't understand when you put all the words together what the meaning is supposed to be. So what do good readers do? Good readers make predictions about what's going to happen next. Good readers take information that they read in the previous chapter and they say, hey, wait a second, I read something in the previous chapter that has something to do with what I'm reading now. So now I see how those two things are linked together. So you need to teach your students what good readers do. And it's difficult to do because you're probably a good reader and you don't consciously do those things in your mind to where you even know that you're doing them. But you have to show struggling readers how to do these things. And the way to do it is read this book. It's called When Kids Can't Read, What Teachers Can Do by Kylene Beers. When Kids Can't Read, What Teachers Can Do by Kylene Beers. So let's take another poll. So on that same sheet of paper, if you still have the same sheet of paper from poll number 1, you can write out the question for poll number 2. So the question for poll number 2 is, I want to learn more about professional learning communities, response to intervention, reading strategies, cooperative learning, implementing technology in the classroom. Those are some really large, abstract ideas. And in order for me to get into details about how each one of those big rocks work, for me to break these big rocks into little rocks so that you can understand exactly how they all work, it would take a little more time than the time we have today. So I'm introducing big concepts to you that you can either research on your own and learn more about so that you can become a more effective teacher, or you can ask me to provide you with more instruction on that. So take poll number 2, write down 1, 2, or all, just depending on your level of curiosity, and put them in an email or write them down on a piece of paper and give those answers to your facilitator. Now, I will keep going in video number 2. The reason why I'm stopping right now is because I'm going to be with you for an hour today, but I can't upload a video that is more than 30 minutes to YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause right now. So you work on your poll. Write down any answers to poll number 2 that you can on a sheet of paper and give the answers to your facilitator. And I'm going to stop the video, and then I'm going to do video number 2 in the series to tell you a little bit more about how to make your lessons more engaging for your students.